I was still holding the warm bag of fried chicken when I heard my stepson in the dark garage say, "Yeah, I already cut the brake line. See you at his funeral tomorrow." And my wife, Carol, my wife didn't stop him. For a second, my whole body forgot how to move. The garage smelled like cold concrete and motor oil. That sour, familiar bite that never really leaves no matter how many times you sweep. The overhead light was off, so the only glow came from the little window over the workbench and the blue screen of Evan's phone. I could see his silhouette, broad shoulders, head tilted like he was listening to a weather report. My fingers tightened around the paper bag, the grease from the chicken soak, through warm, against my palm. I'd picked it up at the Kroger Deli on Harshman Road because I thought stupidly that maybe we could have one normal night. A small peace offering like you do when a house has been tense for months, and you don't want to admit it out loud. Evan's voice stayed calm. Too calm. "Yeah," he said, again low and almost bored. "It's done. He won't make it to Monday." He chuckled like somebody had told him a joke. Then there was Carol's voice faint through the speaker, close enough that my throat tightened. Soft, cautious, not shocked, not angry. "You're sure?" she asked. My vision narrowed. That one question, "you're sure," hit harder than the threat. Not "don't you dare," not "what's wrong with you," just making sure the plan was solid. Evan shifted and I heard the faint clink of metal on the workbench. He was probably spinning something in his hand. A tool, a socket, something sharp. "I'm sure," he said, "you said you wanted it over." There was a pause. I waited for my wife to say my name. To say, "Evan, stop." To say, "Frank's been good to us." To say anything that sounded like a conscience. She didn't. She exhaled into the phone and it sounded like relief. "Tomorrow," she said. "Just be careful." That's when my stomach dropped so hard it felt like I'd missed a step on the stairs. I backed up without thinking. My boot scuffed the concrete and my heart slammed. Evan's head snapped half an inch toward the door. I held my breath so tight my chest hurt. He didn't come looking. He went right back to the call voice, lowering again. "Yeah," he said. "I'll text you when it's done." I slid out like a ghost. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even let it click. I pulled it shut until it rested. Then I walked fast, quiet around the side of the house, the cold December air cutting at my cheeks. The night felt too normal. Porch lights glowing up and down the street. A neighbor's dog barking, once then quiet, somewhere. A TV blared through a window. Riverside, Ohio doing what it always does, going to bed early. Waking up early pretending trouble only happens on the news. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my keys. I shoved them in my pocket and kept walking until I hit the sidewalk. Then I turned like I was just a man out for a short stroll, like I wasn't about to throw up. Patience is my tool. That line came to me the way an old habit does. I'd said it to apprentices in the HVAC shop when they rushed a job and stripped a screw or snapped a line. "Slow down," I'd tell them. "Patience is your tool. You use it first." Now I had to use it on myself, or I was going to march back in there and do something that would ruin the rest of my life. I got into my old sedan, my work beater, Carol called it, like she was embarrassed by it, and sat there with the engine off. My breath fogged the windshield. My phone felt slick in my shaking hand. Call the police. My thumb hovered. And then the next thought came, and practical. What do I say, "Hello, officer"? My stepson said he cut my bra line, and my wife didn't object. No, I don't have a recording. No, I didn't confront them. No, there isn't a dead body yet. In a small town, a man accusing his wife and stepson without proof turns into a punchline real fast. Or worse, you get labeled unstable, paranoid, old, and confused. Evan would smile and say, "Frank's been stressed. He's been forgetting things." Carol would dab her eyes and say he's been so tired lately. And then they'd keep going. I couldn't let that happen. So I did the next best thing. I opened the roadside assistance app and called for a tow. The dispatcher sounded half asleep. "What's the pickup location?" I stared at my own house like it belonged to someone else. "Front driveway," I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. "Silver Ford F-150. Need it towed tonight. Is it drivable?" "No," I said, and my throat tightened around the lie. "Safety issue." "How soon do you need it?" "As soon as possible," I said. Then, because I couldn't help it, I added, "Please." I hung up and sat there listening to the quiet tick of my cooling engine. My hands kept shaking, but my brain was already racing through what mattered. Evidence, dates, times, moves that keep you alive. Evan had always been the kind of man who acted like consequences were for other people. He was 32 and still lived like a teenager. New gadgets, new schemes, old grudges. When Carol and I married 11 years ago, I thought he'd grow up. I thought a steady home might steady him. Instead, he grew sharper, meaner, like he decided the world owed him, and I was the cashier refusing his coupon. A few months back, he'd asked me to co-sign a loan just to consolidate. He said big, innocent eyes. I'd looked at the paperwork and felt my blood pressure climb interest like a shark's smile. I told him no. He'd stared at me a long second, then smiled slow. "You always think you're better than me." "I think I'm older than you," I'd said. "And I've learned what debt does." That night, Carol had taken his side. Not loudly, not directly, just in the quiet ways. The way she'd stop talking when I walked into her room. The way she'd answer my questions with, "Maybe you should let it go, Frank." The way she'd make me feel like peace was my job alone. Clear's throat. Now I understood what letting it go meant to them. Headlights swung down the street. A tow truck. My heart punched my ribs. I sat up watching. The driver parked near my driveway. A thick man in a beanie climbed out, breath puffing. He looked at the truck, then at the house, then at me sitting in the sedan like I was hiding. He walked over and rapped on my window. I rolled it down an inch. "You the one called it in?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He nodded toward the F-150. "What's wrong with it?" I swallowed. The bag of chicken sat cold on my passenger seat, forgotten. "Brake problem," I said. "I'm taking it to a friend's place to look at it." He squinted at me at this hour. "I'm up," I said. "He's up. It's important." The driver shrugged like he'd seen every kind of weird. "All right. Where are we going?" I gave him the address I'd already decided on, the only place that made sense if I wanted my next move to be both safe and clean. "Dayton," I said, "off Needmore Road." The driver whistled softly. "That's a haul. I'll pay," I said. He nodded, went back to his truck, and started the winch. The metal cable rattled. The sound made my skin crawl because it sounded like chains. I watched my F-150 roll up onto the flatbed. That truck had been mine before Carol and I ever shared a bank account. I'd driven it through snowstorms, through heat waves, through years that now felt like they belonged to somebody else. The tow lights blinked red against the houses. No one came outside. No one asked questions. In America, you learn to mind your own business until trouble shows up on your porch. The driver came back with paperwork. "Sign here." My pen shook. I forced my hand steady. Patience is my tool. When I finished, he tore off a copy and handed it to me. He looked at my face like he was trying to decide if I was drunk or sick. "You all right, man?" he asked. I stared past him at my house. The curtains in the living room were drawn. Warm light leaked through the edges. Somewhere inside, my wife was probably sitting on the couch like nothing was wrong. "I'm fine," I said, "just tired." He nodded like he didn't believe me, but he didn't push. He climbed into the tow truck and the engine rumbled to life. As the flatbed pulled away, I felt something tear loose inside my chest, like grief, like anger, like the last shred of the life I thought I had. My phone buzzed, a text from Carol. Where are you? Another buzz. Evan, you moved my truck. My throat went dry. I didn't answer either of them, not yet. I sat there in the dark sedan with a cold bag of chicken beside me, watching the tow truck's tail lights disappear down the road like a fuse burning away. I didn't scream. I didn't march back in there. I didn't let them see my fear. I slipped out and I started doing what I'd always done when something broke in the middle of the night. I handled it. I didn't pull out of the driveway right away. I sat there another full minute, hands on the steering wheel, feeling my heartbeat in my fingertips. The house looked normal. Christmas lights on the neighbor's porch, a wreath on my own front door that Carol insisted on every year even when we weren't speaking much. Inside, Evan and Carol were still there, probably still talking, probably already rewriting the story they'd tell if anyone asked. I started the sedan and drove off slow, like I was just going to grab a late coffee. The air had that Ohio winter bite, sharp and damp, and the road shimmered in places where earlier rain had started to freeze. I headed toward Dayton, toward Needmore Road, because that was where Ray Mercer lived, Evan's biological father. Rye wasn't a friend. Not really. But he was the one person Evbon had always treated with a kind of cautious respect, the way a dog behaves around the person who trained it with a firm hand. Ray had been a mechanic for 35 years, retired now, hands still stained with old grease no matter how many times he scrubbed. He knew cars, he knew tools, and he knew Evan better than I ever would. If anyone could tell the difference between a brake line that failed and a brake line that got cut, it was Ray. And if Evan really had done what I heard, I needed a chain of truth that didn't start and end with my word. I needed reality paper timestamps, witnesses, the kind of boring stuff that holds up in a courthouse. Patience is my tool. The sedan's heater blew lukewarm air that smelled faintly like old dust. My knuckles stayed white on the wheel. I kept seeing Evan's silhouette in that dark garage, hearing the casual way he said funeral like it was a lunch reservation. At the stoplight on Harshman, I looked down at the greasy bag of chicken on the passenger seat. It was ridiculous. This warm, homely thing that was supposed to make a family night feel better. Now it felt like evidence from another life. I drove with the radio low, not for music, but for company. A local station out of Dayton was talking high school basketball, then went into a quick ad for a furnace tune-up, My Old World, then back to the host, laughing about how folks drive like they're angry at the weather. I wanted to laugh, I couldn't. The phone buzzed again. Carol, call me, please. Then Evan again. Where's the truck, Frank? I need it tomorrow. Tomorrow, that word hit like a hammer. I didn't answer. If I answered, my voice would crack, or I'd say something stupid, or I'd tip my hand and give them time to change their plan. I kept driving, crossing the Great Miami River, the dark water sliding under the bridge like oil. I remembered being younger before Carol, before Evan. When the worst thing I worried about was whether my back could handle another summer in attics and crawl spaces. Back when my first marriage had ended, not with betrayal, but with quiet exhaustion. Two good people who didn't fit anymore. Now I was 58, and the person sleeping in my bed wanted me buried. Needmore Road was a strip of tired businesses and low-slung houses, the kind of place where people hang on to what they've got. Ray lived in a one-story brick ranch with a detached garage in an old Buick parked under a carport. A flag hung from the porch, stiff in the cold. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a second. My mouth was dry. My hands had stopped shaking, but only because something else had taken over, something calm and cold. I got out and walked up to the door before I could knock it open. Ray stood there in sweatpants and a flannel shirt, gray hair flattened like he'd been asleep. He looked me up and down, eyes sharp even at this hour. "Frank?" he said like my name was a question. "What the hell are you doing here? I need to talk," I said. He glanced past me at the sedan. "Where's the truck?" "On the way," I said. "Towed?" That woke him up. His eyebrows jumped. Toad, why? Because I don't trust it, I said. I kept my voice steady. Can I come in? He hesitated, then stepped back. You better start making sense. Inside smelled like black coffee and old leather. The living room had a recliner, a small TV, and shelves with framed photos. Evan as a kid holding a baseball bat. Evan at some graduation. Evan next to Ray at what looked like a fishing trip. Ray had kept the best parts. He motioned to the kitchen table. I sat. He didn't offer coffee. He just stared like he was waiting for me to admit I'd lost my mind. I pulled the tow receipt from my jacket and set it on the table. Ray picked it up, squinted, read the address line. You had it towed here, he said slowly. Why? Because you know cars, I said. And because I need you to look at something before anyone else touches it. Ray set the paper down. Frank, what's going on? I took a breath. The words stuck in my throat because saying them made them more real. I overheard Evan, I said. Tonight? In my garage? Ray's eyes narrowed. Overheard him saying what I didn't give the whole thing. Not yet. I just gave the part that mattered. I have reason to believe that somebody messed with my brakes, I said on purpose. Ray sat back. The chair creaked. Snorts. For the first time, he looked less annoyed and more cautious. You accusing Evan? He asked. I'm telling you, I'm not driving that truck, I said. And I want it checked by someone who won't sugarcoat it. Ray stared at me a long second. Then he stood up and walked to the counter where a small spiral notepad sat beside a landline phone. He flipped it open, like he was about to write down a number. What do you want from me? He asked, not looking up. I want you to own the truck, I said. That got his head to turn. Excuse me? I already decided, I said. I'm transferring it tonight. I'll do the paperwork first thing in the morning. I'll sign whatever you need. You'll be the legal owner. Ray's face hardened. Why would you do that? Because I said, and I chose my words carefully, I need a clean line. If something happens with that vehicle, I need it documented who had it and when. Ray's jaw worked like he was chewing on the idea. So you're building a case. I'm trying to stay alive, I said. And my voice went rough on the last word. Ray didn't speak for a moment. Then he leaned forward, 4 arms on the table. Frank, he said quietly, if you're wrong, if you're just scared, and you're dragging me into your marriage mess, I'm not wrong, I said too fast. My heart started up again. I slowed myself down. Ray, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to look. He watched me, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. Ray was a man who trusted engines more than people, facts over feelings. Finally, he nodded once. All right, he said. I'll look. Then he pointed a finger at me. But you listen. If this thing is dangerous, I'm not driving it anywhere. I'm pulling it straight into the garage and putting it on stands. You got that relief hit me so hard my eyes stung. Yes, I said. That's what I want. Ray stood and grabbed his coat from a hook by the back door. Tow truck should be close. Already on the way, I said. He paused, then looked back at me. Why are you giving it to me, Frank? Really, what's the catch? I met his eyes and let a little truth through. There's no catch, I said. Just do me a favor. Check it top to bottom before you even think about rolling it. Ray stared at me. Then his expression softened. Not kindness exactly, but understanding. The kind you get from an older man who's seen what a bad kid can do to a family. He nodded again. Yeah, he said. I will. Outside headlights swept across the window. The tow truck had arrived. Ray moved toward the door and I followed. My phone buzzed again. Clear's throat. This time it wasn't Carol or Evan. It was a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. Then another and another. I looked at the screen as it lit up one more time. Ray Mercer. He was standing right beside me. He hadn't called. He hadn't even touched his phone. Ray saw my face change, and he reached into his pocket, pulled out his own phone, and checked it. His screen lit up too. Missed call, Evan. Ray's eyes lifted to mine. Your boy's looking for that truck, he said quietly. My stomach tightened. Clears throat. Yeah, I said. I know. And as the tow driver lowered the flatbed and the cable clanked like chains in the cold, I realized something I hadn't let myself think yet. Evan wasn't just planning to kill me. He was planning to do it soon. The tow driver didn't waste time. He backed the flatbed down metal winding chains clanking loud in the quiet neighborhood. Ray stood with his arms crossed, watching every inch like he already owned the truck, which in a way he soon would. I stayed back near the sedan phone, and my hand thumb hovering. My heart was beating too fast again, like it wanted to break out and run before I did. Ray waved the driver over. Set it right in front of the garage, he said. I'll take it from there. The driver nodded. You want me to drop it off or unhook it inside? Drop it, Ray said. I'm not driving it an inch. Those words steadied me more than anything else had all night. The truck rolled off the flatbed and settled with a heavy thud. The tow driver finished his paperwork, got paid, and pulled away, headlights disappearing down Needmore Road. Just like that, the street went quiet again. Ray wasted no time. He popped the hood, grabbed a flashlight, and slid a creeper out from the side of the garage. The man moved like muscle memory was doing the thinking for him. This was his language. I stood in the doorway, arms folded tight around myself, watching his boots stick out from under the truck. So Ray said from underneath, voice muffled, You want to tell me exactly what you heard? I swallowed. He said he cut the brake line. Silence. Then Ray rolled out halfway, propped himself up on one elbow, and looked straight at me. You sure that's what he said? Yes. And Carol. She didn't stop him. Ray stared at me a long second, then rolled back under without another word. His flashlight beam jittered across metal hoses lines. I heard him mutter to himself little half words the way mechanics do when they're thinking. My phone buzzed again. Evan, why is my dad calling about the truck? I didn't answer. Then another text came in, this time from Carol. Frank, please. This is getting out of hand. Getting out of hand. I shut the phone off and shoved it into my pocket. My hands were slick with sweat, even in the cold. From under the truck came a sharp intake of breath. Frank Ray said. His voice was different now, tight. Come look at this. My legs felt heavy as I walked over and crouched down. Ray angled the flashlight so I could see. I'm not a mechanic, but I've worked around machines my whole life. I know the difference between worn and broken, between old and damaged. The brake line wasn't frayed. It wasn't rusted through. It was cut clean straight like someone had done it slow, careful, with the right tool. I stared at it until my vision blurred. That's not an accident. Ray finished. He rolled out fully and sat up, running a hand through his hair. That's deliberate. My stomach flipped. Even though I'd expected it, feared it, seeing it made everything heavier, more real. Ray stood and paced once, then stopped in front of me. When did you last drive it? Yesterday afternoon, I said. It felt fine. He nodded. Then it was done after that. My chest tightened, he said. Tonight. Ray blew out a long breath. Jesus. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cold crept through my coat. Somewhere down the block, a door slammed. Life going on. Ray reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. My pulse spiked. Wait. He looked at me sharply. Frank, this isn't a family argument. This is felony tampering. Someone could have died. I know, I said. Just let me make one call first. He hesitated, then nodded once. One? I stepped a few feet away and turned my phone back on. Missed calls and texts flooded in. I ignored them and tapped a number I'd saved years ago but rarely used. Martha Klein picked up on the second ring. "This better be good," she said, voice sharp but alert. "It's almost midnight." "Martha," I said, "I need advice right now." She heard something in my voice and softened. "Where are you dating with my truck? The brake line's been cut." There was a pause. "Cut. How clean," I said. "A mechanic's looking at it now." Another pause then. "Okay, listen to me carefully." I did. "You didn't set this up," she said. "You didn't drive it. You didn't tell anyone to drive it, correct? Correct. And the vehicle's no longer legally in your possession? It will be transferred first thing in the morning." I said, "There's a paper trail." "Good." She said, "Very good. Now, yes, call the police tonight. You want this documented immediately. Dates, times, witnesses." My throat tightened. "They might think I did something." "They might," she said. "But facts beat fear. Stay calm. Say exactly what you know, nothing more." I looked back at Ray, who was already dialing 911. "Martha," I said, "I heard him say he'd already done it, that he wanted me dead." Her voice dropped. "Then you did the right thing getting out of that house." I hung up and walked back. Ray ended the call and pocketed his phone. "They're sending someone," he said. "Soon." We waited in the garage, the cut brake line hanging there like an accusation. Snorts. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. My mouth tasted metallic. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, then grew louder. Red and blue lights washed over the garage door, over the truck, over Ray's line face. 2 officers stepped out, one older, one younger. They took statements. They photographed the line. They asked me why the truck was here. I told them the truth, all of it. Calm, clear, no yelling, no accusations beyond what I'd seen and heard. The younger officer frowned. "You're saying your stepson did this?" "I'm saying the brake line was cut," I said. "And I overheard him say he did it, and your wife." She didn't object. The older officer wrote that down slowly. They left after nearly an hour, promising a follow-up, promising nothing else. When the garage finally went quiet again, Ry leaned against the workbench and rubbed his face. "My own kid," he said. "Jesus." I sank into a folding chair. Exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. My hands were shaking again, worse this time. Ray looked at me. "You okay?" I opened my mouth to say yes, and instead I gagged, barely making it to the trash can before I threw up. Ray didn't say a word. He just held the can steady and waited. After I sat there empty and shaking, staring at the concrete floor, "I don't feel like I won," I said hoarsely. Ray shook his head. "You didn't win. You survived." Outside, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail notification from Evan. I didn't listen to it yet. I just knew one thing for sure now. This wasn't over. By morning, the story had already started without me. I woke up on Ray's couch with my coat still on and my neck stiff from sleeping wrong. The smell of coffee drifted in from the kitchen, bitter and strong. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. Then the image of that clean-cut brake line snapped back into place, sharp as a knife. Ray was at the table, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. "You're internet famous," he said without looking up. My stomach sank already. He turned the screen toward me. Carol's Facebook post. It was long, emotional, carefully written. "Please pray for my family. Frank left last night in a fit of anger and took things too far. My son is being accused of something terrible, and we are heartbroken. Lies can destroy a family faster than any accident." There was a picture of her and Evan from last Christmas, smiling arms around each other, our living room glowing behind them. The comments were already stacking up. "So sorry, Carol." Praying for you and Evan? Some men just can't handle losing control. You deserve better. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. She didn't mention the brakes. I said no. Ray replied. She mentioned feelings. I swung my feet onto the floor, my head pounding. That's how she always does it. By noon, the neighborhood had chosen its version of the truth. I drove back to Riverside to grab clothes, keeping my head down. People I'd waved to for years suddenly found reasons to look at their phones. Mrs. Keller from 3 houses down stared at me like I'd tracked mud into her church. At the end of the block, I saw 2 squad cars parked near my house. My house, the one with the wreath still on the door. An officer stepped up when he saw me. Frank Delaney. Yes. We need to ask you a few more questions. Inside, the place felt hollow. Carol sat on the couch, eyes red, hands folded like she was in a waiting room. Evan stood near the hallway, arms crossed, jaw set. He looked calm, almost bored. You told them I left in a rage. I said not to Carol, but to the room. She didn't look at me. You scared us. Evan smirked. Yeah, Frank, you've been acting weird lately. The officer raised a hand. Let's keep this respectful. I answered their questions again. Same facts, same timeline. I could feel Evan watching me like he was waiting for me to slip. Then he spoke. My stepdad hates me, he said, voice wounded. He's been trying to get me out of the house for months. That's not true, I said. Carol finally looked up. You said he needed to move out. I said he needed a plan. I replied, he's 32. The officer scribbled notes. When they left, Carol stood and pointed toward the door. You shouldn't be here. I laughed once, short and ugly. You planned my funeral. Her face went pale. You're sick. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. That afternoon, Ray called. Police came by again, he said. They talked to the neighbors about what one guy saw Evan in your garage late the night before. Another heard tools clanking. My pulse jumped. They told you that. They told me they're building a timeline. By evening, the local church group page had its own post. Carol had shared it, asking for prayers during this difficult time. Rumors are flying, and it's breaking our hearts. Someone commented, "We stand with you, Carol." Truth always comes out. I stared at that line for a long time. Truth always comes out. That night, I sat alone in a cheap motel off Route 4, watching the parking lot through the blinds. Every set of headlights made my shoulders tense. I listened to the Evan voicemail I'd ignored the night before. Frank, he said, voice smooth. You really messed up this time. Dad's upset. Mom's upset. You didn't have to do this. We could have talked. Mom, he never called her that around me. I forwarded the voicemail to Martha with the date and time attached. 10 minutes later, she called. Good, she said. That helps. Helps what intense, she replied. In tone. He's not surprised. He's annoyed. The next morning, Buddy Harlan called me. We'd worked together for years before his knees gave out. Frank, he said, you're going to want to hear this. He'd stopped by an auto parts store near your house. He said, same one Evan liked to hang around. Asked politely about camera footage. Explained he was helping with an investigation. They let me see it, Buddy said. Not officially, but enough. My heart thudded. And your stepson bought a tubing cutter 2 days ago. I closed my eyes and Frank Buddy added, your wife came in 10 minutes later. Different register, paid cash. The room felt suddenly very still. She knew, I whispered. She didn't stop him, but he said that night. The radio announced it. Police are considering felony charges in a brake tampering investigation involving a Riverside family. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, listening to my own life, reduced to 30 seconds of airtime. For the first time since the garage, I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because the truth had finally gotten a voice. The courthouse in Riverside sits like it's been tired for 100 years. brown brick stone steps worn smooth in the middle. The kind of building that smells like old paper floor polish and winter coats that have been through too many Ohio storms. I'd driven past it my whole adult life and never once imagined I'd walk in there carrying the truth about my own family like it was a cinder block. Martha Clean met me out front, collar up, hair tucked into her scarf. She looked like a woman who'd seen every variety of human mess and had stopped being surprised by any of it. "You ready?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm here." "That's the same thing," she replied. Inside, people's voices bounced off the high ceiling. A metal detector beeped. A deputy in a tan uniform told everyone to keep moving. And there in a hallway lined with bulletin boards full of public notices, I saw them: Carol, Evan. Carol wore a navy coat and a cross necklace, like she dressed for sympathy. She clutched a tissue in one hand, eyes red mouth, set in that careful line she used when she wanted to look wounded but strong. Evan stood beside her in a clean button-down hair-combed face, smooth and calm. He looked like a guy waiting for a job interview, not a man who tried to turn my breaks into a funeral. When he saw me, his lips twitched just a little, like he couldn't believe I'd really taken this far. Carol's eyes met mine. For a heartbeat, I saw fear flash there. Then she replaced it with anger. "You don't have to do this," she whispered as Martha and I approached. Martha didn't even slow down. "Ma'am, he didn't do anything. He reported a crime." Carol flinched like the word crime burned. Evan smiled at Martha like he was charming. "Morning." Martha looked him over like she was inspecting a cracked furnace line. "Don't talk to me." We went into the courtroom and sat on the wooden bench. The room was smaller than people think. Not a big TV courtroom with dramatic music, just a judge's bench, a few rows of seating flags in the corners, and a hum of quiet conversation that sounded like a church before service. I recognized faces. Mr. Keller from down the block. 2 women from Carol's church group. A guy I'd seen at Kroger 100 times. Folks in a small town don't miss a public show, especially when it involves a family that's been smiling at bake sales for years. My throat went tight. My hands started shaking again, and I pressed them between my knees. Patience is my tool. Martha leaned toward me. "Breathe. Let them watch." "It's fine." "It doesn't feel fine," I murmured. "It doesn't have to," she said. "Just be steady." The judge came, an older man, gray hair, glasses low on his nose. He had the face of someone who'd heard every excuse and already knew how the story ended. Everyone stood, then sat. The prosecutor spoke first. Then, Evan's attorney, a younger guy in a shiny suit, stood up and started painting his picture. "This is a family dispute," he said. "A stepfather with resentment, a stepson being scapegoated, a wife caught in the middle." I felt heat climb my neck. Carol dabbed her eyes like she was on cue. Evan stared straight ahead, calm as a statue. Then Martha stood. With respect, she said, voice clear, "This isn't resentment. This is a cut break line. This is a tow receipt. This is a timeline. This is an adult man stating he overheard a plan to kill him, and it is corroborated by physical evidence." The judge stared over his glasses. "We're here for a preliminary hearing," he said. "Not a sermon, but I'll hear what you've got." Martha nodded once. "Yes, Your Honor." Then the prosecutor called the first witness, a technician who'd examined the brake line after police impounded the truck from Ray's garage. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't need to be. He described the cut clean straight, not corrosion, not where a tool cut. The judge nodded slowly as if he'd expected nothing else. Evan's attorney tried to shake him. Is it possible, he asked, that the line was damaged by road debris? The technician blinked like the question annoyed him. A clean cut at that angle. No. Is it possible it was an accident during maintenance? The technician leaned into the microphone. Then, someone accidentally cut a brake line clean through, and didn't notice. That's not maintenance. That's negligence at best. The judge scribbled something and murmured, or something else. Next, the prosecutor played Evans's voicemail, the one I'd forwarded to Martha. Frank Evans' voice filled the room smooth as oil. "You really messed up this time." I watched the faces in the audience. A few heads tilted. People recognized that tone. Not fear, not surprise, annoyance, control. When it finished, Evans' jaw tightened for the first time. Martha stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Delaney." My legs felt like wood as I walked to the stand. I raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. The microphone was too close, making every breath sound loud in my own ears. I could see Carol across the room, staring at me like I was an enemy. Martha's voice was gentle when she began. "State your name and age for the record." "Frank Delaney," I said, 58. "And where do you live, Riverside, Ohio?" "Mr. Delaney, in your own words, tell the court what happened the night you called for the tow." I swallowed. My mouth was dry. The room was silent enough that I could hear someone's coat zipper. "I'd stopped at Kroger," I said. "Picked up fried chicken, trying to have a normal night." A few people shifted. That detail did something. Made it human, not just legal. "I came in through the garage." I continued. The light was off. I heard Evan clear his throat on the phone. I heard him say, "Yeah, I already cut the brake line. See you at his funeral tomorrow." My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated that it did, but it was real. Martha nodded steady. "And who was he speaking to?" I looked at Carol. I didn't want to, but I did. "My wife," I said. "Carol." Carol's head jerked and she whispered to her attorney. Martha's tone stayed even. "How do you know it was her?" I heard her voice. I said 11 years. "You know a voice." The prosecutor asked, "Did she object?" I felt my chest tighten again, the same tightness as that night. "No," I said. She asked if he was sure. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Soft, startled, like wind through dry leaves. Carol's face went pale. Evan's attorney jumped up. "Objection, hearsay." The judge held up a hand. "Overruled for the purposes of this hearing. We're evaluating probable cause." Martha leaned in. "What did you do next, Mr. Delaney?" "I left," I said quietly. I didn't confront him. I called a tow truck because I didn't want to drive the vehicle. "Why did you have it towed to Mr. Mercer's residence?" "Because Mr. Mercer is a retired mechanic," I said. "And because I wanted someone who knows cars to look at it before anyone could claim I imagined it." The judge's eyes flicked to Ray, who sat in the back row. Ray nodded once, tight-faced. Evan's attorney stood in approach for cross-examination, like a man itching for a fight. "Mr. Delaney," he began, "isn't it true you've had conflicts with Evan?" "Yes," I said. "Isn't it true you wanted him out of your home?" "I wanted him to be responsible," I said. "He's 32. "Isn't it also true," he said, voice rising, "that you transferred a vehicle with a dangerous defect to Mr. Mercer?" I felt a jolt of anger. Martha's hand lifted slightly, calm. I answered steady. "I told Mr. Mercer not to drive it. I asked him to inspect it before it moved." Ray's voice came from the back, low but clear. "He did." The judge rapped his pen on the desk. "Mr. Mercer, you'll wait to be called or you'll be removed." Ray shut up. Evan's attorney pressed. "But you didn't tell the police immediately, did you? You didn't call 911 from your driveway." "I called a tow," I said. Then my attorney. "Then the police were called the moment a cut was confirmed." He smirked. "Convenient." I looked him dead in the eye. "Staying alive is convenient." That earned a few quiet, surprised chuckles from the benches. Not laughter. Just that older Midwestern sound, people trying not to react. The attorney shifted tactics. "You're claiming your wife was part of this. That's a serious accusation. I'm not claiming I said. I'm telling you what I heard." And yet he said you have no recording. Martha stood. Your Honor, may I? The judge nodded. Martha turned slightly and spoke to the court like she was laying out a blueprint. We have physical evidence of a deliberate cut. We have a timeline placing the defendant near the garage. We have voicemail indicating consciousness of action. We have witness statements. And we have store video documenting the purchase of a tubing cutter. The prosecutor added in payment records showing Miss Delaney was present at the store. Shortly after Carol made a sound, half gasp, half choked, her head snapped toward Evan, and for the first time her face wasn't controlled. Snorts. It was naked confusion and fear. Evan didn't look at her. He stared forward, jaw working. Carol whispered, Evan, what did you do? He hissed under his breath. Shut up. That was the moment. Not the cut break line, not the voicemail. That two-word snap, shut up, like she was a problem, not a person. Like she existed to keep the story clean. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Mercer? He said, you're the owner or soon-to-be owner of the vehicle. Ray stood. Yes, Your Honor. And you examined the brake line. I did. And in your professional opinion, it was cut. Ray said, voice thick, clean on purpose. The judge nodded slowly, then turned his gaze on Evan. Evan's attorney tried to regain footing. Your Honor, we maintain this as a... The judge held up a hand again, and his voice was flat as a shovel. No. The room went still. He looked down at his notes, then back up. A mechanical coincidence, he said, repeating the phrase like he was tasting something sour with a cut that clean. He paused just long enough for everyone to feel it. Next, you'll tell me the truck performed surgery on itself, he added. This time people did laugh. Quiet, sharp laughs, the kind that break tension in a room full of older folks who've been holding their breath. Evan's face flushed. Carol began to cry, real tears now, not the stage kind. She covered her mouth with her tissue and shook her head over and over like she could undo what she'd allowed. I didn't know he'd really do it, she whispered. I stared at her, and my voice came out low, tired, and honest. You didn't stop it, I said. You let it breathe in our house. The judge's gavel wasn't dramatic, just one solid knock. Based on the evidence presented, he said, this court finds probable cause. No contact order is issued. Defendant will be held pending further proceedings. Evan's attorney whispered urgently to him. Evan stood, hands clenched, eyes burning. As the deputy moved in, Evan finally looked at me. Not with sadness, not with regret, with hatred. For a second, my knees threatened to buckle. Not from fear of him now, but from the weight of seeing the truth of a person so plainly. Ray shifted beside me as if he'd step between us if he had to. Carol's crying turned into a quiet, broken sound, and I just sat there breathing, feeling the courtroom air fill my lungs, like the first real breath I'd taken in days. When it was over, I walked out into the cold Ohio sunlight. It hit my face, pale and weak, but it was light all the same. I didn't feel victorious. I felt alive. I thought the courthouse doors would feel like an ending. They didn't. They felt like a door you walk through and realize you're still standing in the same storm, just on a different side of it. Outside, the wind cut across the steps, snapping at coats and making people hunch their shoulders. A couple of the church ladies who'd been in the courtroom avoided my eyes. One of them, a woman I'd helped carry groceries for once when her husband was in the hospital, whispered to her friend and turned away like I was contagious. Ray stood beside me, hands jammed in his pockets, staring out at the parking lot like he wanted to punch something and knew he couldn't. Martha came down the steps, quick and purposeful. Don't go back to the house, she said immediately. I wasn't planning to, I replied. Good, she said. No contact means no contact. Let law enforcement handle Evan. Let the divorce attorney handle Carol. The word divorce landed heavier than I expected. Not because I didn't want it, because some part of me still couldn't believe I was here. That my second marriage, the one I thought would be calmer, had nearly ended with a funeral. Rye exhaled through his nose. "I can't believe my kid," he said. Martha gave him a look. "Believe it," she said. "Then act accordingly." She turned to me. "Frank, there's going to be backlash. People will say you set him up. People will say you're exaggerating. You cannot get sucked into arguing with the internet." I almost laughed. "I'm 58. I don't even know my Facebook password half the time." Martha's mouth twitched. "Good. Keep it that way." Ray offered to drive me back to the motel. On the way, we passed familiar Ohio things that suddenly felt unreal. Casey's gas station signed a high school football banner. On a fence, a church marquee that said "Joy is a choice." I wanted to stop and tell that church to update their sign. Joy is a choice, sure, but so is evil. At the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. The shaking had mostly stopped, but my body felt wrung out like a rag twisted too many times. That afternoon, I got a call from the detective, Mr. Delaney. He said, "I want to inform you that we executed a search for tools consistent with the cut. We also collected video from the auto parts store." "I know," I said. My friend helped retrieve it. "We're treating this as serious," he said. "Your decision not to drive the truck likely prevented a fatality." A fatality. He didn't say your death, but that's what he meant. When I hung up, my chest tightened again. Not from fear this time, from the delayed realization of how close I'd come. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the garage, the dark Evans phone glow, Carol's voice asking if he was sure. Around 3 a.m., my heart started racing for no reason. My hands went numb. Clear's throat. I thought I might be having a heart attack. I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub, breathing shallow, trying not to panic. Patience is my tool. I whispered it like a prayer over and over. By morning, I made an appointment at urgent care. I hated doing it. Men my age will do anything to avoid sitting in a waiting room full of coughing strangers, but I didn't trust my body anymore. The nurse took my blood pressure and raised her eyebrows. "Been under stress?" she asked. I laughed once dry. "You could say that." The doctor told me my heart was fine, but my numbers were high. He told me to cut caffeine, get sleep, and this part made me want to roll my eyes, reduce the stress. "Sure," I said. "I'll just tell it to stop." He didn't laugh. He just looked at me like he'd seen that exact joke 1,000 times. "Mr. Delaney," he said gently, "stress can kill you if people don't." That line stuck with me. Over the next week, things moved in slow official steps. Papers, phone calls, Martha checking in, the detective updating me, Rye calling, with short, quiet updates like he didn't trust himself to talk too long without breaking. Carol tried to contact me twice, once with a voicemail that started with sobbing and ended with anger. Another time through a mutual friend from church who left me a message saying Carol just wants closure. Closure. Like she'd misplaced a sweater not tried on my funeral. Martha told me not to respond. "Silence is a boundary," she said, "and boundaries are what kept you alive." 2 weeks later, I went back to the house with a deputy to collect the rest of my things. Walking in felt like walking into a museum exhibit about my own life. My boots on the hardwood sounded too loud. The air still held Carol's vanilla candle smell, mixed with the faint scent of laundry soap. The living room looked the same. Family photos, couch blanket folded just so, but now it all looked staged like a set. Carol wasn't there. Martha had arranged that, but I saw evidence of her everywhere. A dish towel hanging neat a cup in the sink, her handwriting on a sticky note, "Call plumber." I carried boxes out while the deputy stood by, polite and bored, like he'd done this 100 times. I found my father's old toolbox in the basement, the one I'd inherited when he died. The weight of it in my hands made my throat tighten. My dad had been a quiet man, Steady, the kind who tell you to fix what you can and walk away from what you can't. In the bedroom closet, I found the last thing I expected. The fried chicken bag still crumpled in the trash from that night. Grease stains hardened the smell long gone. I stared at it for a long time. That little stupid attempt at peace sitting there like a joke. When I left, I didn't look back. I signed the divorce paperwork the next month. No screaming, no big courtroom drama, just signatures and quiet. Carol tried to add a note in the margin about reconciling later. Martha crossed it out with one firm stroke. Ray transferred the truck back to me once the evidence process was finished, but I didn't want it anymore. The sight of it made my stomach twist. I sold it to a guy in Dayton for cash cheaper than it was worth because I didn't want it in my driveway ever again. With that money and what I had saved, I bought a small condo near the river in Dayton, nothing fancy. Second floor, quiet. No attached garage. Just a little balcony with a view of water that moved even when everything else felt stuck. The first morning there, I made coffee and sat outside in a sweatshirt, watching the river carry leaves downstream. The air smelled clean like damp earth and cold stone. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt tired. I felt older than 58, but I also felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. Not perfectly safe. Nothing in life is. But safe enough to breathe without tasting fear. A week after I moved in, I took a small portion of the money from the truck and donated it to a local program that helps victims of domestic violence and supports safe exit plans. I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because I kept thinking about how many people hear threats in their own homes and have nowhere to go. When the receipt printed, I stared at it and felt my eyes sting. Clear's throat. Justice isn't watching someone die. Justice is watching the truth stand up when you couldn't. Clear's throat. That evening, I got one last message from a number I didn't recognize. It was short. You ruined everything. No name, no signature, but I knew. I deleted it without replying. Because the real revenge wasn't a clever speech or a dramatic punch. It was refusing to play their game anymore. I sat on the balcony listening to the river, and I thought about the moment in the garage, the glow of Evan's phone, the calm cruelty in his voice, the silence from the woman I trusted. If you take anything from my story, take this. Trust your gut. Not your pride, not your hope, not the version of someone you want to believe in. Your gut. And if you're hearing something in your own home that makes your skin go cold, don't ignore it. Move smart. Document. Get help. Tell someone you trust. I didn't scream. I didn't swing. I stepped aside and I let the truth do the hitting. If this story stayed with you, if it hit close to home in any way, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more real stories like this, stories about survival, truth, and justice, stick around, subscribe, and keep your eyes open out there. Because at our age, wisdom isn't just knowing what's right. It's knowing when something's wrong.